Welcome to Slightly Stranger Things at Maths Week, Episode 4, The Square Roots of Crime. The 45-degree set square, constructor of octagons, the twirler around a pen thing. A motive for murder? Wait, what? It all starts with Pythagoras. You know, the theorem guy. The square and the hypotenuse equals the square of the other two sides. Prove that in secondary school and walk out those school gates like... In fact, the theorem may not even be his. 1,000 years before, the Babylonians were using the theorem to work out land boundaries. And that really is what everything boils down to. Of course, people are using Pythagoras' theorem now for social distancing calculations. But it may be a surprise to know that Pythagoras' crowning achievement was not just getting onto the Irish Junior Cert syllabus. He had a whole religion with some very big thoughts about a lot of things, including the worship of numbers. And if you're going to be worshipping numbers, they need to be fairly predictable. Pythagoreans believe that every number should be the ratio of two integers. Meanwhile, Hypostasis, an early follower of Pythagoras, was supposedly messing around with right-angled triangles one day. Don't you know the way you'd be? He looked at an isosceles, the 45-degree one, and said, if one side was 1 and the other side was 1, then the length of the hypotenuse must be the square root of 2. And he couldn't just leave it alone. He had to then try and prove what the square root of 2 was. And he ended up proving that the square root of 2 cannot be expressed as the ratio of one integer over another. Now, the story goes that when Hypostasis found a number that couldn't be expressed as a fraction, others in the Pythagorean Brotherhood were so furious about him letting the genie out of the bottle, they threw him into the sea and he died. Imagine that, reacting violently when faced with scientific reality that challenges your worldview. They really were so primitive back then. Now, speaking of half-truths and stories we tell ourselves, what about Hypostasis?
Does this story seem possible? Do you believe this story? Yeah, but then how do you explain the bullet hole in his phone?
Yeah, this version of the story of Hypostasis is probably mostly legend, but people think he did find irrational numbers and Pythagoreans were upset by their existence and may have tried to keep it a secret. Either way, it seems pretty interesting that this simple twirly on a pen set square contains in it something powerful enough to make our religion question its beliefs.